And we're back. That was a long one. I hope I didn't miss anything important. Sorry about that. Someone wanted to test their new soul jar spell, but didn't quite get the incantation quite correct. Now it's 3.5 weeks later. Perhaps after posting this video I should check on my GME game stocks. Hopefully they're still at the $4 mark. Haven't gone any lower. But for now, gods. We gotta finish these. There's a gravity well, but that my spaceship of knowledge is orbiting around, preventing me from blasting off into the final frontier of literally any other object, topic, or video. But for completionism's sake, I feel that we've got to finish this series. We can't start talking about the philosophy of the gods and when you don't even know about the goddesses of lust or bitchy oceans. So, welcome to the 4th and final episode of the mainstream gods of Faerun, S to Z. And we start the final episode of Gods with Sune, Lady Firehair, this lady of love, princess of passion, goddess of love and beauty, whose holy symbol is the face of a beautiful red-haired woman. I mean, it would be silly to assume that the holy symbol of the goddess of beauty would be anything else but her own face. Sune, Firehair, is said to be the fairest of the powers. When she is represented, she is shown as the most beautiful woman in the realms, with sweeping, radiant red hair and incredible charms. The Sunite faith is a popular one in large metropolitan areas and among the nobility. Those of a literary or artistic bent, as well as those falling in love or looking for life mates, often venerate the Lady Firehair. She has been romantically linked with many of the Faerunian powers in the myths of the realms, though she has never borne any love at all for the gods of fury, Talona or Tempus, since their functions posit the destruction of many beautiful things, both living and inanimate. Sune is herself said to be benevolent and sometimes whimsical, alternating between deep passions and shallow flirtations. Although I do kind of recall that in the Time of Troubles book, Sune was the one to indignantly shriek that her power was now dependent on her followers, so she wasn't entirely benevolent. A good example of conflict theory, really. Anyway, Sune appears rarely to mortals. When she is seen, it is a human female of unearthly beauty, clad only in a diaphanous silken gown and her impossibly long, sweeping red hair, which often assumes the appearance of flames. While she always has red hair, her appearance changes from time to time. Sometimes her skin is golden and her eyes almond-shaped. Sometimes she has skin of mahogany and eyes the colour of darkest amber or honey. At still others she has reddish skin and prominent cheekbones, and at yet others her skin is ivory white and her eyes are sky blue or forest green. It gives the impression that she understands that there are many different types of beauty. Not one racial phenotype is going to be more beautiful than others, and she can run the spectrum. It is almost impossible not to look at Sune once even a glimpse of her is caught. No mortal can resist getting a good look at such supreme beauty. No animal or giant animal analogue will even attempt to harm Sune, and no male being of any sort can lift a hand or thought to harm her once he sees her. It's simply impossible. I think this is like a gesh, so that all males are affected regardless of sexuality, and I'd be interested in the philosophy of this decision in regards to the rest of the gender expression spectrum. Sunites of previous editions had to have a high charisma, and clerics who gained an imperfection that couldn't be disguised through illusion or transmutation, or healed, found themselves without a job. Beauty is more than skin deep, say the Sunites. It issues from the core of one's being and shows one fair or foul face to the world. The followers of Sune are believers in romance, true love winning over all, and following one's heart to one's true destination. Fated matches, impossible loves, and ugly ducklings becoming swans are all part of the teaching of Sune. Novice Sunites receive the following charge: love none more than yourself, save Sune, and lose yourself in love of the Lady Firehair. Perform a loving act every day and seek to awaken love in someone new each day. Respond to love at least once in a day. Encourage beauty wherever you find it. Acquire beautiful things of all sorts and encourage, sponsor, and protect the artists who produce such things whenever and wherever you find them. Also, there is a Fireheart festival each year that's really devoted to just lying around and listening to music and eating hors d'oeuvres. This is where I found out that Faerunians call hors d'oeuvres bitelets. That's canon. I love that. Our old friend, the Blackstaff's book of 1000 spells, comes back with a Sune specific spell called Love Bite, a 2nd level transmutation. I guess Love Bite is better than calling it Hickey. Casting time, 1 action, range is 30 feet and components are verbal and somatic. Duration, instantaneous. You create a pair of spectral lips that fly towards an ally and gift them with 2d4 temporary hit points. At higher levels, you can cast a spell using a 3rd level or higher spell slot. You gift 2d4 temporary hit points for each slot level above 2nd. Talona, Lady of Poison, Mistress of Disease, She of the Deadly Kiss, Mother of all Plagues. Goddess of Disease and Poison, her holy symbol is 3 teardrops on a triangle. Talona, one of the Dark Gods, is often depicted as a withered old crone with a scarred, tattooed face and religious texts. Where she walks, misfortune and death follow. She's an odd deity. Sages have described her as having a personality of a petulant, greedy child, trapped in the body of a once beautiful woman now scarred by horrific disease and ravaged by age. Talona's power slowly wanes after each great plague in Faerun, kind of like Papa Nurgle actually. When she feels vulnerable in her position, she unleashes another wave of misery and disease-brought death, and receives a torrent of prayers entreating her to spare the inhabitants of Faerun from her withering touch. Her power then waxes again in an endless cycle of indifference, devastation, and appeasement. Talona appears as a tall, gaunt human female with long, unkempt hair and elongated, reaching fingers. She looks like a formerly voluptuous woman whose frame and charms have been racked by hard years, horrific disease, and starvation. Talona usually appears at festivals when her followers need her the most, but she has no taste for violence. If someone attacks her clergy members while she is present, she empowers a few of them with her touch, bestows full spells to all of her worshippers who can use them, and disappears, leaving them to fend for themselves. Talona's dancing movements are said to be alluring and her lips welcoming and gentle, but unless she wills it otherwise... Lips welcoming and gentle... I wish I hadn't written that. But unless she wills it otherwise, anything non-magical that touches her rots away, from monsters' claws to broadswords, collapsing and crumbling away within 3 rounds of initial contact. Talona's ethos stresses that life and death are in balance, but that death is the more powerful, and should be paid proper homage and respect. Life and death are balanced only because birthing and generation are so plentiful. Death is the true power, and the lesson that waits for us all. If it falls for the followers of Talona to bring home the point with the tip of a dagger, so be it. Talona's faithful are taught that if they respect death in the many ways the powers can deal it, that knowledge will allow them to live longer. If people think themselves invincible thanks to wealth or a swift sword, or armor or strong spells, the great equalizer of disease, Talona's breath, will teach them respect and humility. Blackstaff's 1000 spells gives us Touch of the Talontar, a 2nd level necromancy. Casting time 1 action, range touch, and components verbal and somatic, duration concentration up to a minute. A purple-hued radiance surrounds your hand until you successfully hit a creature with a melee spell attack. On a hit, the target takes 3d10 poison damage, and it must make a constitution saving throw. On a failed save, it is also poisoned until the end of its next turn. Once you hit a creature and deal damage, the spell ends if the target made its saving throw, or after the end of its next turn. If the save was failed, the spell ends. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 3rd or higher level, the poison damage increases by 1d10 for each slot level above 2nd. Talos, the Destroyer, the Racing One, the Stormstar, the Stormlord. Portfolio is storms, destruction, rebellion, conflagrations, earth-shakings, and vortices. His symbol is 3 lightning bolts radiating from a central point. I guess he's also in charge of the Vortex Club. Talos is the destructive force of nature. He is the god of storms, of forest fires, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, general destruction, really. He often attracts the destroyer, the raider, the looter, and the brigand amongst his followers. His actions seem often petty and vengeful and are frequently motivated by rage and anger, and the desire to not appear weak or compromising to any of his followers, or to the other powers of Faerun. He exults in seeing what he or his followers can burn, break, flood, kill, or otherwise utterly destroy. I know a couple of characters like that. When Talos is seen, which is seldom, he appears as a broad-shouldered, bearded young man with a single good eye, the other covered by a dark patch. So Zeus. It's easier to say that he just looks like a young hot Zeus. Some sages say that the empty eye socket is filled with whirling stars. He dresses in a half-suit of field plate armour, minus the helm, worn over smooth black leather armour and black leather gloves. If he moves his left glove, 3 staves issue forth from the hollowness that is his left arm. Weird. He can then wield any of them in a round with his right hand. The first is a staff made from the first iron ever forged in the realms. It can raise and hurl the winds. The second is a staff of the first ever silver smelted in Faerun. It can call up deadly waves, waterspouts, whirlpools, or part water with such power as to lay bare the bottom of a river, lake, or harbour. The first staff is carved from the first tree ever felled in Faerun, and it can move earth swiftly over a large enough area to open great rifts in the land, or can cause earthquakes. And Talos the Destroyer is the dark side of nature, the uncaring and destructive force that lies waiting to strike at any time. Talasans are taught that life is a combination of random effects and chaos, so the devout should grab what they can, when they can, as who can say when Talos will strike and bring them into the afterlife. Talasan clergy are to preach to all of the might of Talos, warning them that the forces only he can command is the fury of all Faerun. They are never to cease in such speech, so that everyone may know that Talos is to be worshipped by all, and that in time to come he must be, or he will destroy all life with the forces at his command. His clergy should walk unafraid in all storms, forest fires, earthquakes, and other disasters, for the power of Talos protects them. There goes my idea of having all the people of Talos meet every week in a storm shelter. Clerics of Talos can endure extremes of heat and cold in their surroundings without harm. They can never die of exposure, even if naked and wet, and can walk through fires of natural origin unharmed, although their clothing and equipment will still be damaged. They suffer the normal damage dealt by all cold and fire-based magic and creatures' breath weapons. Blackstaff's 1000 spells gives us Storm Shield, a 3rd level abjuration. Casting time, 1 action, range 60 feet, components verbal somatic, duration concentration up to 1 minute. You conjure a small area of whirling air that occupies a 5-foot radius sphere, centered on a point you choose within range. The swirling air forms a shield that blocks acid, cold, fire, lightning, and thunder damage. The shield attracts all elemental discharges and neutralizes them, granting all creatures within a 30-foot radius from its center immunity to the listed damage types. However, the shield's immunity is limited. If the shield reduces damage a creature would take to 0, the spell ends if it is not the first time that the shield has reduced damage that particular creature would have taken to 0 since the spell was cast. So, as an example, the shield would make you immune to a firebolt, but would fail if you got hit by a fireball the next round. Even if other people were immune to that one, any single person within the 30-foot radius can only take 1 immunity from those listed energy types before the spell fails. Tempus, Lord of Battles, Foe Hammer. Oh, like that woman pilot from Halo 1. Portfolio is War, Battle, and Warriors. His holy symbol is an upright flaming sword. Tempus is random in all his favours, yet his chaotic nature favours all sides equally. Lord Tempus may be on an army's side one day and against them the next, such is the nature of a war. Tempus is prayed to most of all on the nights before battles and regularly venerated by all warriors, regardless of their alignment. As a result, he is a strong, exuberant, robust god, a warrior's god. A Tempus sometimes appears at huge battles and important combats, and on rare occasions to individuals who are in a position to cause great strife by their decisions. Although mighty and profoundly honourable in battle, Tempus answers to his own warrior's code. He is quiet and solitary in relationship to other Faerunian deities, pursuing no long-lasting alliances or brief flirtations. He is known to love food, drink, and the hunt, though he loves battle best. Tempus appears as a human giant, 12 foot tall, his plate armour battered and bloodied by combat, his face hidden by a massive warhound, but his hooded gaze a palpable force. He bears a great battle axe or black sword notched and stained from much use in his gauntleted hands. His legs and arms are bare and crisscrossed by bleeding wounds, but they don't seem to affect him as he rides into battle. He sometimes this is my favourite part of Tempus, I swear. He sometimes appears afoot, but is often riding a white mare, Varos, or a black stallion, Daros. If he rides Varos upon one side, then that side will succeed in its battle. If he rides Daros, then defeat is in the offing. Most often he appears riding with 1 foot on each horse as they gallop across the battlefield, indicating the chaotic nature of battle. it's an amazing image. Tempus does not win battles, Tempus helps the deserving warrior win battles. War is fair as that oppresses all sides equally, and that in any given battle a mortal may be slain or become a great leader among his or her companions. War should not be feared but seen as a natural force, a mortal force, a storm that civilization brings by its very existence. The faithful of Tempus are charged to arm all for whom battle is needful, even foes. They should retreat from hopeless fights, but never avoid battle and slay one foe decisively, and bring battle to a halt, rather than hacking down many over time and dragging on hostilities. They are to defend what they believe in, lest it be swept away, and remember the dead who fell fighting before them. Above all, they should disparage no foe and respect all, for valour blazes in all, regardless of age, gender, or race. The Black Staff spell I'm giving a Cleric of Tempus is Adamantine Weapon, a 3rd level transmutation. Casting time, 1 action. Range, touch. Components, verbal, somatic, and material. The material being a non-magical weapon made of metal. Duration, concentration, up to 10 minutes. Your weapon becomes adamantite, almost indestructible and capable of cutting steel. You have a +1 bonus to hit and damage rolls, and the weapon deals double damage against structures and objects. The weapon counts as adamantite and magical, and its hit points are also doubled for the duration. Torm. The true god, the brave, the foolish, the loyal fury. The god of duty. Loyalty, obedience, and paladins are his portfolio. His symbol is a white right-hand gauntlet. Torm is the patron of paladins and those who face danger for the greater good. In life, Torm was the most faithful of warriors, obeying all the commands of his king regardless of personal danger. Today, he is the war arm and champion of Tyr, lord of justice, delivering justice to those who are evil, deceitful, and destructive, and acting to keep law, order, and loyalty everywhere. The loyal fury is unflinching in his duty and judges his faithful accordingly. He is stern, righteous, and unyielding, yet his heart is filled first and foremost with goodness, and he can be a kind and gentle power when dealing with the young, the weak, and the faithful friends of all sorts. Torm can choose to appear as a helmless 12-foot tall man in ancient full-plate armour stained dusky purple, who is possessed of an internal calm. Sometimes he appears as an aging warrior with grey-white hair who has withstood countless evils without breaking, and at other times as a handsome blonde young man of incredible personal magnetism, self-confidence, and quiet enthusiasm. When entering combat, Torm often shifts form into a lion-headed man. In any form, the Lord of Duty has a stern voice and manner, unwavering courage set in his square jaw, the light of righteousness flashing in his striking deep blue eyes. Following the time of troubles, the religious hierarchy of Torm's faithful was completely overhauled, incensed by his followers' persecution of other goodly religions under his mortal leader's misguided direction. Torm has dictated a series of responsibilities and obligations for his followers to atone for their collective failings. These debts are collectively referred to as the penance of duty, detailed now. Debt of persecution. To repay their persecution of other religions, the truly faithful must aid the other goodly religions in re-establishing themselves. Debt of dereliction. To atone for their abdication of duty to guard against strife, the Tormish must expend all possible effort to eliminate any surviving cults of Bane, as well as to oppose all efforts of Xvimus, and the Zentarim. Debt of destruction. Followers of Torm are obliged to relieve the destruction to the magic weave incurred during the time of troubles. All dead magic areas are to be reported and repaired. In addition, all permanent results of the magical chaos of the time of troubles are to be similarly undone, and all wild magic areas reported and eradicated. Blackstaff's 1000 spells gives us Bolt of Glory for Torm, a 6th level evocation. Casting time, 1 action, range, 60 feet, components, verbal, somatic, and material, being your holy symbol, duration, instantaneous. You stretch out your hand and a bolt of blinding energy leaps at your target. Make a ranged spell attack at a target you can see within range. Undead, fiends, and creatures with sunlight sensitivity take 10d8 radiant damage on a hit. Aberrations, beasts, constructs, elementals, monstrosities, oozes, lycanthropes, and chromatic dragons take half as much. Other creatures are not affected by the spell. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a slot of 7th level or higher, the amount of radiant damage increases by 1d8 for each spell slot above 6. Tymora, Lady Luck, the lady who smiles, our smiling lady. Lady, a smiling hour. Sorry, there was just... How many times can you say that Tymora smiles? We get the picture. Goddess of good fortune, skill, victory, adventurers, and adventuring. Adventuring? Why do we bother worshipping anyone else? This is a goddess who is focused on us, on our side, and surely understands why we have to take that goblin with the cool name as the new squire. Her symbol is a coin, face up, with her smiling face. Tymora is sometimes called Tyche's fair-haired or fair-tressed daughter, or Basharpa's bright sister, but these are more poetic titles than designations of her maternal lineage or her hair colour. In actuality, Tymora is half of the deity once known as Tyche, with Basharpa being the other half. Tymora inherited Tyche's grace and kindness when that goddess split into 2 beings in the Dawn Cataclysm, a war among the gods that long preceded the Time of Troubles, and is said to have heralded the fall of Mithranor. Basharpa garnered more of Tyche's wanton, willful nature, sensual side, and restless energy. Old tales tell that luck plays a crucial role in each person's life. When each newborn baby enters the realms, Tymora flips a coin forged from the remnants of the original goddess of luck, Tyche. Basharpa calls it in the air, moon, heads, or cloak, tails. If Basharpa is right, that person is cursed with misfortune for the rest of his or her days. If she's wrong, Lady Luck smiles in that child for the rest of his or her life. For some rare beings, the coin lands edge on, and these luckless few can forge their own fates, for they have more freedom over their destinies than the powers themselves. Tymora rarely walks Faerun in avatar form, but when she does appear, she has preferred the form of a tall, thin, graceful woman with long, flowing, unbound, platinum blonde hair, and eyes like blue-black stars and a kind and regal face. And I bet she smiles. Her voice is musical and never rises or becomes harsh. Tymora's faith teaches that one should be bold. Who dares, lives. The battle cry of the follower of Tymora is, "Fortune favours the bold." A brave heart and willingness to take risks beats out a carefully wrought plan 9 times out of 10. One must place oneself in the hands of fate, meaning in the hands of Tymora, and to trust to one's own luck. Fortunately, Blackstaff's 1000 spells has come up with a 5e version of a classic Tymora spell, and this is fortunate because I didn't want to try and balance the original. Favour of Tymora, 2nd level abjuration. Casting time, 1 action, range, touch, components, verbal and somatic, duration, until dispelled, and this can vary. This spell can be cast on a specific creature one time. The recipient gains 3 d20s that it can use when needed. When it rolls a d20 to make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, it can roll one of the d20s granted by the spell and use its result instead. The creature can choose to roll the d20 after rolling the first die, but before it knows the result. Once the second die is rolled, it can choose to use either result. Only one extra die can be used for any one check, and once a die is rolled, it is expended. Once all the dice have been used, the spell ends. It's like an extra inspiration point or two. Tyr, the even-handed, grim jaws. Don't get that one. The maimed god, the blind overlord, the wounded one, the just god. He is the god of justice. His symbol is balanced scales resting on a warhammer. When he is depicted in religious art, Tyr appears as a noble warrior missing his right hand, lost to Kazef the Chaos Hound, improving his resilience and strength of spirit. In recent years he is shown blinded as well, a fatality of the wrath of Ao during the Time of Troubles. Tyr's symbol shows his nature, justice through benevolent force and armed vigilance. He opposes all beings who deal in trickery, rule-breaking and unjust destruction or misdeeds. He is said to be a latecomer among the powers of Faerun, appearing over a millennium ago, but after most other realms' powers had established themselves already. His faith is popular, as everyone knows exactly what Tyr expects his faithful to do, and everyone can trust Tyrans to be honourable, honest, just, and righteous. Tyr appears as a fearless, burly, bearded warrior in light armour who is missing his right hand. He does not disguise or bandage the stump and is always armed with a magical longsword or warhammer. His eyes are a fierce steel grey when he first appears, but always fade away to leave black, empty sockets before he vanishes. His brow is continuously surrounded by an imperial white radiance that marks him as divine to all. While some paladins prefer a straight black and white choice and therefore revere Tyr, he is most popular with the bureaucrats, judges, and merchants who make the entire system move efficiently. Worshippers of Tyr see the world in clear-cut moral terms. They like to see Faerun firmly cleansed and ordered by laws that are evenly and diligently applied. They are not very tolerant of other world views and do not find parody, mockery, or even questions about their faith amusing. Perhaps they are the stereotype of the lawful stupid paladin. Novices of Tyr are charged to reveal the truth, punish the guilty, right the wrong, and be always true and just in your actions. Tyr and his followers are devoted to the cause of justice, to the righting of wrongs and the deliverance of just vengeance. Tyr and his followers are devoted to the cause of justice, to the righting of wrongs and the deliverance of just vengeance. This is not necessarily equality or fairness, as some make the maimed god out to represent, but rather the discovery of truth and the punishment of the guilty. Tyrans tend to be stiff-necked about theology and see matters in black and white terms. Blackstaff's 1000 spells gives us Summon the Justice, our first level evocation. The casting time is 1 action, range is 30 feet, components verbal and somatic, duration instantaneous. Sacrificing some of your own vitality, you emit holy energy that compels your enemies to come forward. You hurl 2 rays which can be aimed at one target or split between more. For each ray, make 1 ranged attack spell against a target within range. On a hit, the target takes 2d6 radiant damage, and you can pull out to 13 feet closer to you. You also take 2 points of radiant damage for each ray that hit, which cannot be reduced by any means. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 2nd level or higher, you create 1 additional ray for each spell slot level above 1st. Umberlee, the Bitch Queen, Sea Queen, Queen of the Depths, Goddess of Oceans, currents, waves, sea winds, whose symbol is a wave curling left and right. Umberlee, the Bitch Queen, rules from her watery lair in the flooded level of the abyss. She is worshipped by most out of fear, as opposed to adoration, though some few, such as were-sharks, who she created to try to undermine Sune, find her ethos to their liking. Ship crews toss her gems over the sides of their vessels to calm storm-tossed waters. She has a large number of shrines in coastal cities, and sailors often leave flowers, candles, small candies, or coins on her altars in hopes that Umberlee will spare them on the next voyage. I really like this goddess. So others who pay tribute to her include merchants sending goods by sea, port cities, and island nations and settlements who would be devastated by her wrath and have no powerful patron deity to counter her menacing demands. Umberlee is just plain malicious, mean, and evil. She breaks agreements on a whim when she feels that she has not gotten the best part of a deal, and takes great pleasure in both watching her sharks tear shipwreck victims to shreds and watching others die slowly of drowning. She is also vain and expects to be flattered. If she has any weakness, it is probably her incessant greed for power and her intoxication with exercising it. Umberlee's avatar rarely appears. When she does, it's a female blue-green torso with taloned hands, elbow fins, and eyes of pale, pearly death and hair of kelp. In this form, rising above the waves, she aims to impress, and usually towers above sailors and the decks of a doomed ship. She wears giant shell jewellery and a cape made from 1,000,000 mauve jellyfish. Her voice hisses and booms like ocean breakers, and she laughs cruelly as she flings watery death and destruction on those who view her. The Umberlee faith has no set ethical outlook, save that the sea is a savage place and those who travel it had best be willing to pay the price of challenging Umberlee's domain. The doctrine of Umberlee declares that all should know Umberlee and fear her, for the wind and wave can reach everywhere. Fair offerings bring fair winds to travellers over the waters, but for those who do not pay their respects, the sea is as cold as Umberlee's heart. All who travel the seas are warned that the dead serve Umberlee most faithfully. Blackstaff's 1000 spells gives us Umberlee's Water Spout, a 7th level conjuration. Casting time, 1 action, range 300 feet. Components, verbal somatic, duration, concentration up to a minute. You conjure a 5-foot radius by 80-foot high cylinder-shaped vortex on a body of water, centered at a point you can see within range. Any creature that comes in contact with the vortex must immediately make a dexterity saving throw or take 3d8 bludgeoning damage from the high winds in the vortex. In addition, if the creature is medium-sized or smaller, it is sucked into the vortex and becomes restrained. On a successful save, a creature takes half the damage and isn't sucked into the vortex or restrained. A creature that starts its turn restrained within the vortex takes 2d8 bludgeoning damage and is drawn 10 feet higher. A creature that reaches the top of the vortex is ejected from the water spout and thrown 3d20 feet up into the air. A creature thrown from the vortex takes falling damage as normal. Waterborne creatures that come within 10 feet of the vortex must make a similarly same dexterity saving throw or be sucked into the vortex and suffer the effects. You can use a bonus action on each of your turns to move the water spout up to 30 feet and cause any creature that contacts the vortex to make a dexterity saving throw or take the vortex's full damage and suffer its effects. A creature takes half the damage on a successful save and doesn't suffer the vortex's effects. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 8th level or higher, both the bludgeoning damage for contacting the vortex and for creatures restrained within increases by 1d8 for every spell slot. And finally, Waukeen, the merchant's friend, goddess of trade, money and wealth, whose symbol is an upright coin with Waukeen's profile facing left. Waukeen is a relatively young deity, and case may be, she probably was born again in the latest edition. She appealed to the rising merchant class in the realms, and her worshippers included shopkeepers, members of trading costers, wealthy merchants, caravan guides, peddlers, money changers, and smugglers, many of whom may return to her fold yet, or have returned, with the events that have transpired. After the Time of Troubles in 2nd edition, Waukeen was unheard from in the realms and thought destroyed or dead. When all the powers of the realms were confined to Toral's surface, she was never spotted by mortals, and when the Gods' War ended, no avatar came forward to take over her portfolio. Not even Sirik and Mask, responsible for the death of Lyra and Bal, claimed her portfolio or claimed to have killed her. Her priests were deprived of other spells, and many of her worshippers and churches turned to other faiths. Pandemonium reigned amongst her clergy. Finally, in 1365 DR, a prophet of Lyra appeared with a revelation that was interpreted to mean Waukeen was dead and banished from the realms would not return. The prophet appeared at the gates of each of the temples of Waukeen in the realms on a series of days, transported by magic. At each stop, the prophet was said that Lyra would hold the portfolio of Waukeen in trust as its regent and grant spells to the worthy. In 5th edition, she has returned to her space. The story of Waukeen is actually pretty interesting, and I recommend people either go read it, or if you just prefer to request, I'll tell you all about it sometime soon. Waukeen appears as a young, beautiful, slim woman whose hair is long, luxuriant, and the hue of spun gold. Her eyes are 2 golden orbs. She wears a crown of gleaming strips of various precious metals, studded with a wide variety of precious stones, a cloak of linked gold coins, a sash of cloth of gold, and gold-soled boots of linked lace pearls. Surprised she doesn't just drape herself in astral diamonds and call it a day. Waukeen teaches that mercantile trade is the best road to enrichment, increasing the general prosperity of all buys ever greater civilization and happiness for intelligent folk Faerun-wide, bringing everyone closer step by step to the golden age that Waukeen says lies just around the corner, if people conduct themselves correctly. It is the duty of all who believe in the merchant's friend to destroy no trade goods, raise no restrictions to trade, and propagate no malicious rumours that may harm trade, such as saying that grapes from Chacenta are poisoned or that Chimerian carved furniture contains boring worms that Cormites are trying to export to the lands of competitors. Indeed, such rumours are to be challenged when heard and refuted if possible. True to her social democratic self, Faithful of Waukeen should give money freely to beggars and businesses alike, both to demonstrate the bounty of the goddess and the wealth to be gained by service to her, and to increase the free coin in everyone's hand. If everyone has more than enough coin to spend, the tendency to hide and hoard is less, and the urge to buy this or that all the greater, and more things are bought, everyone is richer, everyone wins. Through riches, the lives of all are made better, and the golden age draws nearer. And Blackstaff's 1000 spells has given us a spell that will help with local merchanting, totally a word, called No Customs, a 3rd level divination. Casting time 1 action, range 90 feet, components verbal and somatic, duration instantaneous. Choose a person within range. That person may make a wisdom saving throw to resist the spell. If they succeed, you learn nothing. If they fail, you learn all the local laws and customs that target subscribes to. You have advantage on any charisma check involving a member of that community. And with that, we have finished the classification of our gods. Join me in a few days for a sort of redo on this series. We talked about the gods and how they prefer to appear to us in their portfolios. Now I want to tackle the philosophy of the gods, what they represent, and why we need them in our games usually, as both players worshipping them and DMs being them. Expect another video later on this week devoted completely to spells and what they mean for a certain special day coming up. Until then, to be continued, Kia pai tōra.